Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Newshour, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja. Coming up in the next hour. UK and France working with Ukraine on plans to end the fighting with Russia, says Prime Minister Keir Starmer, as European leaders converge for crisis talks in London. Israel blocks aid into Gaza as ceasefire standoff escalates. Hamas wants Israel to move to the second phase of the ceasefire. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to chair the Wildlife Board meet in Gujarat's Gir National Park on World Wildlife Day on March 3rd. And in a first, US firm Firefly makes its first moon landing with uncrewed Blue Ghost spacecraft. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is hosting European leaders, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, at a high-level summit in London. The meeting aims to strengthen support for Ukraine and work towards securing a just and enduring peace in the region. Leaders from France, Germany, Denmark, Italy, Turkey, Canada, NATO and the European Union are in attendance.
Britain and France are working with Ukraine on a new plan to end the conflict with Russia. Prime Minister Keir Starmer is hosting a London summit called Securing Our Future on Sunday for crisis talks on Ukraine after a blowout between Kiev and Washington 2 days ago. Ahead of the summit, Starmer said that a plan to stop the conflict will be worked upon and discussed further with the United States.
We've now agreed that the United Kingdom, along with France and possibly one or two others, will work with Ukraine on a plan to stop the fighting, and then we'll discuss that plan with the United States.
Starmer emphasized the need for European countries to step up with a security guarantee for Ukraine, but insisted that US backing remains critical.
I think the way this works, to my mind, is that European countries have to do more and provide a security guarantee, and that's what I'm discussing with President Macron and others. It's what I'll be discussing today. But I've always been clear that that is going to need a US backstop, because I don't think it would be a guarantee without it.
Ahead of the summit, Starmer welcomed Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni to the Downing Street. The Italian leader stressed the need for unity amongst Western nations. The London meeting brings together key European leaders, including representatives from France, Germany, Denmark, Italy, Turkey, NATO and the European Union.
We need a plan, and that's why we're here. I think one of the big problems is that we're witnessing right now diplomatic cacophony. I mean, the number of groups that are dealing with the war in Ukraine has been multiplying as we go along. Someone needs to grab a hold of it. Someone needs to show leadership. That's the only way Europe can have skin in the game.
Zelensky arrived in London on Saturday, where he was warmly received by the British Prime Minister. His visit comes just a day after a closely watched meeting with US President Donald Trump at the Oval Office. During the visit, Zelensky expressed deep gratitude to the UK for its unwavering support. Both leaders announced a $2.84 billion worth loan agreement to strengthen Ukraine's defense capabilities.
Well, thank you very much. And that's our side of it. And in the next few days, the disbursements of money, we should be able to make those to Ukraine. I know that they are needed as quickly as possible. Thank you so much, Minister, for being able to join us today.
As tensions with Russia escalate, the Ukrainian president continues his diplomatic efforts to secure a long-term support from Western allies. Bureau Report, DD India.
And DD India's Akhilesh Suman joins us on the story now. Akhilesh, the London summit is bringing together key European leaders, but the feeling is that US support for Ukraine remains critical. Do you think the summit will provide answers for lasting peace in Ukraine?
Actually, Tanvi, this summit is going to be complementary to what Mr. Trump had been doing with Mr. Zelensky. Because Mr. Trump, that was the first meeting with Zelensky. And I think that in first meeting, some diplomatic norms were not followed. Means what negotiations should take place behind the camera, that took place in front of the camera, and that created disaster. But anyway, European leaders, I think, quite maturely are meeting in London, and they are also accepting that without US support, any negotiation, any solution of the Ukraine crisis cannot be solved. So I think in that way, if you hear Mr. Starmer and if you hear, Italian Prime Minister Meloni, she is telling that European Union and US should have a summit meeting on the issue of Ukraine. Hungarian Prime Minister has written that the European Union should also talk to, Russian President Mr. Putin. So I think all parties are concerned that, peace should be established. And what will be the modalities of the peace, that should be decided. And everyone almost is now accepting that, talking to Mr. Putin is quite essential, as talking with Mr. Zelensky is also very important. So I think in that way, this summit is going to contribute to Mr. Trump's efforts for peace in Ukraine. And I think in that way, you have seen that NATO is there, Canadian Prime Minister is there, and European Union, from European Union, 14 members have come here. So this summit, I think, will also, give some solace to Mr. Zelensky, who had in Washington D.C. that was not very well. I think this is going to be persuasive for Mr. Zelensky, and it will also bolster the efforts of what Mr. Trump was doing.
Okay. Now the UK has announced a £2.26 billion loan to help Ukraine buy more arms. What is the message here?
Message is quite clear that Ukraine should not feel like an orphan. This is the message, that if US is putting some conditions on the aid, US has been the largest contributor, as it is claiming. So in that way, I think the soft loan that is being offered by British Prime Minister, I think it is a big solace for not only for President Zelensky, but also for the Ukrainian people, because Ukrainian people are also feeling helpless. That what should be done if Americans also goes with Putin. So this is the messaging for Mr. Trump and also for people of Ukraine, that yes, European Union is with you, Europe is with you, you are part of Europe, even if you are not part of European Union. So in that way, it will be a good bolster. It will be a good, when Mr. Zelensky goes back to Kyiv, he will have something in his hand to tell to his people, to his cabinet minister, to his party that yes, Europe is there behind me. And I think this will also help Mr. Trump to reconsider whatever embargo has he put on the further grant. So I think it is going to help both ways. It will help Mr. Zelensky, and it will also help Mr. Trump to reconsider, because without support from all sides, from Europe and from America, that is what Mr. Trump wants. That why America should be the only contributor? Why Europe, other nations who are claiming to be sympathetic to the cause of Ukrainians, they should also come forward. And I think Starmer's announcement is in that way.
Okay. We leave it here. Thank you very much, Akhilesh Suman, for your analysis on the story. Russia views Ukrainian President Zelensky's reproval at the White House as a sign of a shift in US policy, claiming alignment with Russian vision and criticizing Europe's continued support for the war. Meanwhile, both countries stepped up drone strikes, with Russia targeting Ukrainian gas facilities, while a drone attack in Zaporozhye injured a civilian and caused significant damage. DD India's Rabindra Chauhan reports.
Russia sees the reproval of Ukrainian President Zelensky at the White House as a sign of a US policy shift. It praised US President Trump, claiming the US foreign policy now aligns with Russia's vision. It also criticized Europe for continuing to support the war in Ukraine.
Trump, он прагматик. Вот это его лозунг «здравый».
Trump, he's a pragmatist. His slogan is common sense, of course means, and everybody already see it, a shift to a different way of doing things. But the goal is still MAGA, make America great again. He has got a new cap now. Everything that Trump promised, he did. You see, this gives politics a lively human character. That is why it is interesting to work with him.
We vote for the same resolution of the United Nations General Assembly, which contains absolutely balanced wording on the Ukrainian crisis. It was really impossible to imagine before. The new administration is rapidly changing all foreign policy configurations. This largely coincides with our vision.
Both Russia and Ukraine have continued drone strikes on each other. On Sunday, Russia's defense ministry reported targeting gas processing facilities used by Ukrainian forces. Meanwhile, a Russian drone attack on Zaporizhia on Saturday evening injured one civilian and caused a massive fire at a residential building. Russia said on Saturday that it had captured 2 more settlements in the Donetsk region, while Ukraine claimed to have repelled Russian attacks in several areas over the past 24 hours. On the other hand, Ukraine condemned the visit of IAEA employees to the Russian-occupied Zaporizhia nuclear power plant via Russian-controlled territory, calling it a violation of territorial sovereignty. The Foreign Ministry accused Russia of using blackmail and pressuring international organizations to operate under illegal and contradictory conditions in occupied regions. Rabindra Chauhan's report for DD India.
On to the US now. In just over a month of his second term at the White House, Donald Trump has signed a whopping 79 executive orders touching on issues from significant foreign policy changes and massively slashing the US Agency for Foreign Aid. But some of his decisions have met fierce resistance. By February 27th, 16 of the orders had been challenged in court, according to monitoring by Just Security at the New York's University School of Law. A report on Trump's recent decisions. Since returning to the White House on January 20th, Donald Trump has signed a whopping 79 executive orders touching on issues from foreign policy to transgender rights. No US president has signed so many executive actions so quickly since 1937. In his 77th order signed on Saturday, Trump made English the official language of the United States of America. The move aims to promote national unity and cohesion, citing English as the country's founding language. But the US is home to over 350 languages, with nearly 68 million people speaking a language other than English at home. Critics argue the move may marginalize non-English speakers. Also on Saturday, US President Donald Trump ordered a new trade investigation that could heap more tariffs on imported lumber, adding to existing duties on Canadian softwood lumber and 25% tariffs on all Canadian and Mexican goods due next week. Another priority, immigration, is covered by 15 orders signed by Trump. The US is deploying around 3,000 additional active duty troops to the Mexican border, as it has been a key campaign promise of Donald Trump. But not all is well in the US's leading food producing state of California. Fear is taking root among thousands of migrants who labor to feed a country that now seems ready to deport them.
There is a great deal of depression, sadness, and anxiety because we fear being deported and separated from our families.
The climate of fear is worsening working conditions, reducing wages, pushing undocumented workers further into the shadows, and this undercuts the wages of American workers. That is one of the great tragic ironies of this moment, that for people who did vote for America first, for people who did want jobs to go to Americans, this is not resulting in that. What this is resulting in is, yes, maybe a couple people get deported, but now you have thousands of people who are so afraid of being deported that they're willing to work for way less. They're not going to report wage theft. So if anything, it's undercutting the value of American workers.
Further, the Trump administration sent out a second round of emails to federal employees of multiple agencies to summarize their work over the past week. This comes as Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency team looks at mass layoffs to dramatically trim the federal footprint. With his Republican Party only holding narrow majorities in Congress and seeking to move quickly to remake the US government, Donald Trump has brandished his pen as a weapon targeting trade, immigration, civil rights, and federal bureaucracy. Bureau Report, DD India. Meanwhile, Americans remain divided over the heightened confrontation between US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office one day earlier. Dozens of Ukraine supporters on Saturday protested outside the White House at Lafayette Square, calling for continued US support for Ukraine. The demonstrators also condemned Trump's treatment towards Zelensky, saying they were appalled by it and the confrontation was a disgrace to the world.
It was awful. It was embarrassing. It was childish. It was bullying. Couldn't be any worse. Doesn't represent me. Doesn't represent most of us, I think.
Further, residents and tourists on Washington, D.C.'s mall expressed a range of reactions to the dispute.
The thing that stuck out the most for me was the reporter that asked Zelensky about wearing a suit if he owns one. And I know my father was in the Gulf War and also was in Vietnam. And I think somebody that's dealing with a war-torn country like Zelensky is now, I think it shows how superficial we are to talk about whether he's wearing a suit or not, or whether we can really maybe address the issue at hand, which is that people are dying. And I think that's just such a tone-deaf question.
I think it was good in our part, America's part. I believe Trump was standing up for the American people instead of being a pushover, pretty much, and putting America first. So that was my opinion on it. I mean, it was a little hectic, but that's my opinion on it.
Still to come on DD India Newshour. Iran's parliament ousts its finance minister over economic mismanagement. Faithfuls feel Pope's absence as he misses third Angelus prayer due to double pneumonia. And Hollywood's most anticipated nights, the Oscars, set to unfold at the renowned Dolby Theatre in Los Angeles.
Complex issues hit.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Newshour. I am Tanvi Taneja. Back to Europe now. Members of Austria's small liberal NEOS party on Sunday voted in favour of a coalition deal with the Conservative People's Party and Social Democrats, paving the way for their planned three-party government to take office. The provisional result of the vote, displayed at a hybrid meeting of roughly 2,000 party members, showed 94.13% in favour, clearing the two-thirds hurdle required for the party to join the planned coalition government in which it is due to head the foreign and education ministries. OVP leader Christian Stocker said a common programme had been agreed with the Social Democrats and Liberals, ending Austria's longest stretch of time without a government in modern history. The acting leader of Abkhazia, Badra Kunba, won the presidential election in the breakaway Georgian region months after his predecessor was driven from office following protests over an investment deal with Russia. Gunba took almost 55% of the vote in Saturday's election ahead of opposition leader Adgur Zinba, who secured 42% votes. Russian President Vladimir Putin congratulated Gunba on the election win on Sunday. Pope Francis, who has been in hospital for more than 2 weeks with double pneumonia, spent a calm night, the Vatican said on Sunday after reporting that he was in a stable condition. On Saturday evening, it had said that the Pope's condition was stable, adding that he was still receiving oxygen, had no fever, had been eating, was alert and praying. Sunday saw the Argentina-born Jorge Bergoglio forced to miss giving in person the traditional Angelus prayer for a third straight week on Sunday. Instead, the Vatican released a written text at noon in which the pontiff thanked believers for their support and prayers. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock said that the European Council needs to take decisions on massive investment in their common European defence capability, urging that domestic and EU budget rules are loosened to allow support for Ukraine.
The European Council therefore also needs to take decisions on massive investment in our common European defence capability. I am therefore doing everything I can to ensure that the European Council contributes to this by making the EU Stability and Growth Pact more flexible.
On to West Asia now. Israel has stopped all humanitarian aid to Gaza after the expiration of the first phase of the ceasefire agreement with Hamas. Israel is pushing for the continuation of the truce, while Hamas has rejected the US-backed extension and is calling for the implementation of the second phase of the truce. DD India's Mihir Mekuri has more.
Israel on Sunday blocked all humanitarian aid from entering Gaza after the first phase of its ceasefire agreement with Hamas expired. The move follows Hamas's refusal of a US-backed extension.
Upon the conclusion of the first stage and in the light of Hamas's rejection of the Witkoff framework, we decided at last night's discussion that as of this morning, the entry of goods and supplies into Gaza will be prevented. And it must be emphasized, Hamas currently controls all of the supplies and goods that are being sent to the Gaza Strip.
With the expiration of Phase 1 of the Gaza truce on Saturday, Israel is pushing for its continuation. The focus is on the exchange of hostages in return for the release of Palestinian prisoners, alongside a larger flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza.
They have huge amounts of humanitarian aid there. Probably in the hands of Hamas, it became its number one financial income for Hamas during that time, and they are not going to get it for free.
A proposal put forward by US President Donald Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff seeks an extension of the ceasefire to cover the Islamic holy month of Ramadan and the Jewish holiday of Passover. However, Hamas has rejected the offer, demanding an immediate move to Phase 2, calling Israel's actions blackmail and accusing them of undermining the agreement. Supporting Hamas's stance, Egypt's foreign minister urged on Sunday for the full implementation of the Gaza ceasefire deal, calling on the European Union to pressure Israel to enforce it. Meanwhile, families of Israeli hostages held in Gaza are urging Israeli Prime Minister to move forward to the second phase of the ceasefire.
Netanyahu, there is no need to extend Phase 1. There is an immediate need to initiate Phase 2.
The current crisis in the negotiations is a deliberate crisis orchestrated and manipulated by Netanyahu.
Earlier, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced that he had signed a declaration to expedite the delivery of around $4 billion in military assistance to Israel. The Trump administration has approved nearly $12 billion in major foreign military sales to Israel, reaffirming America's long-standing commitment to the country's security. Now all eyes are on how mediators from Qatar and Egypt will navigate the current stalemate and work toward resolving the situation. Mihir Makri's report for DD India.
Iran's parliament has sacked the country's finance minister after initiating impeachment proceedings over his handling of high inflation and a plummeting currency. Economy and Finance Minister A. Hemati lost a vote of confidence with 182 of 273 parliamentarians present backing his removal. Lawmakers took turns angrily censuring Hemati, blaming him for Iran's economic woes. Egypt has rejected attempts aimed at establishing a rival government in Sudan, warning that such moves jeopardize the unity, sovereignty and territorial integrity of the war-torn country. Sudan has been locked in a war between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces for nearly 2 years, plunging the country into what the United Nations describes as one of the worst humanitarian disasters in recent history. A week ago, the RSF and its allies signed a charter in Kenya declaring the formation of a government of peace and unity in areas under their control. Egypt also called on all Sudanese forces to prioritize the country's supreme national interest and to engage positively in launching a comprehensive political process without exclusion or external interference. Firefly Aerospace became the second US company to land on the moon on Sunday with its debut Blue Ghost lander, kicking off a 2-week research mission as one of a handful of private firms to reach the front line of a global moon race. The size of a compact car, the 4-legged Blue Ghost carried 10 scientific payloads as it touched down near an ancient volcanic vent on Mare Crisium, a large basin in the northeast corner of the moon's Earth-facing side. Flight controllers at Firefly's Austin, Texas headquarters watched as Blue Ghost descended towards the moon's surface at a gentle 2 miles per hour speed, confirming on a live stream that the spacecraft had entered lunar gravity a month and a half after launching atop a SpaceX rocket from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Firefly became the second private firm to score a soft moon landing. Houston-based Intuitive Machines Odysseus made a lopsided soft touchdown last year. 5 nations have made successful soft landings in the past on the moon: the then Soviet Union, the US, China, India and Japan. And the 97th Academy Awards, also known as the Oscars, will take place on Sunday at the renowned Dolby Theatre in Los Angeles. As one of Hollywood's most anticipated nights, the event is set to celebrate cinematic excellence from across the globe. This year, the Oscars will be hosted by Emmy Award-winning comedian and television personality Conan O'Brien, who will be hosting the ceremony for the first time. This year's nominations have highlighted a diverse range of talent, with Jacqua Audiard, Emilia Perez leading the pack with 13 nominations. The film features Carla Sofia Gaskin, the first openly trans woman to be nominated for an acting award. Other films like The Brutalist and Wicked are also competing with 10 nominations each. One of the most significant nominations this year is for Anuja, a short film produced by Guneet Monga and Priyanka Chopra, which has secured a historic spot in the Best Live Action Short Film category. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Over 40 Al-Shabaab militants were killed in a Somali National Army operation supported by international partners in the Biakad area of Hirshabelle state on Sunday. Somali National Television reported that the operation, with the help of vigilant locals, is ongoing. Hundreds of protesters gathered outside SpaceX Los Angeles factory on Saturday, criticizing Elon Musk's involvement with the US government. The demonstration included signs condemning Musk and US President Donald Trump. The USS Carl Vinson aircraft carrier arrived in South Korea's Busan on Sunday, reaffirming the US commitment to countering North Korean threats. This marks the first visit of a US aircraft carrier to South Korea since President Trump's return to office in January. You're with us on DD India Newshour, still to come on the show. An expert take on the ongoing London summit on Ukraine and the future of European security. We bring you the success story of India's wildlife conservation efforts on the other side. And the holy month of Ramadan begins in India and other parts of Asia.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Newshour. I am Tanvi Taneja. Going back, all right, before we go back to our top story, let's also tell you that India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is on a visit to the western state of Gujarat today, paid obeisance to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel's idol inside Sri Somnath Jyotirlinga Mandir premises. Prime Minister Modi also offered prayers at Sri Somnath Jyotirlinga Mandir, the Somnath temple located in Prabhas Patan near Veraval in Saurashtra on the western coast of Gujarat, is believed to be the first among the 12 Jyotirlinga shrines of Lord Shiva. It is an important pilgrimage and tourist spot of Gujarat. The site of Somnath has been a pilgrimage site from ancient times on account of being at the Triveni Sangam, the confluence of three rivers, Kapila, Hiran and Saraswati. And going back to our top story now, leaders and representatives of European countries, Turkey and Canada joined British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in the Lancaster House, London, to work out a Ukraine peace plan. And to discuss this, we are joined by Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. Welcome, sir, to the program. First of all, would you say that the war of words in the White House a few days ago may have vitiated the atmosphere for working out an effective Ukraine ceasefire plan?
Well, of course, I think the incidents that all of us have seen at White House and the Oval Room were quite unprecedented. But diplomacy always takes steps forward, and I think diplomacy is about widening the scope of agreement and understanding and reducing the differences so that you can have an agreement. And I think that process has already begun. So we are on a good wicket after what we saw, which was rather unusual, if I may say.
Yeah, very interesting how you describe it. President Trump has so far not been very receptive to President Zelensky's demand for security guarantees from the US in any ceasefire plan. Why is that?
I don't think that's quite the picture as I see it. I think what President Trump wishes to engage in is a peace negotiation because he believes that peace is more important than war. And he also believes that the continuation of this war is perhaps not to the advantage of all the countries globally. And therefore, it is necessary to pursue that with great vigor. And I think in the discussions that he had with some of the European leaders, President Macron of France and Prime Minister Starmer of the UK, he had reiterated that particular aspect. And I think both Starmer and Macron were of the opinion that that was something that they should also look at.
How united are the European Union member states, in your view, in ensuring Ukraine's security?
Well, I think the London summit that is taking place currently, as I understand, is aimed towards this particular objective. As I see it, the Securing the Future summit, as they call it, and it's basically almost an existential issue for them, the way they've presented it, seems to have three broad points. I think the first thing that they're trying to assert is that in this very unpredictable era of Trump's presidency from Washington, that there is a unity within Europe, and that Europe will stand for certain causes in alignment with each other and hopefully with the United States. The second thing that I think they are looking at is to look at this issue of Ukraine and the war that has been going on for 3 years. They have been rather insistent on trying to label the Russians as an aggressor and continuing the war so that Russia does not get victory. But I think there is growing understanding, because if you notice the reactions that came after the Oval Office meeting, most of them were in alignment with the need to support Ukraine, and many of them were in support of Zelensky as well. But there were a few cautionary words too. For instance, they said that it is necessary to engage the Americans in the dialogue. And of course, there were certain right-wing elements from within Germany, as well as the leaders of Slovakia and Hungary, who had insisted that they should really move for peace rather than continuing the war. And in fact, I think the Slovak president perhaps said that, in the meeting that's coming up in the European Council on Thursday, that they would probably block any attempts that did not talk about peace. And the third big issue that I think they're looking at is this issue of how do they deal with this transatlantic alliance, because this is something that they have lived with for the last 8 decades. And is this something that is fraying? Is NATO something that is going to be a bit of a challenge at this time?
Now, the European Union is working with Ukraine on a plan to stop the fighting in Ukraine, which will then be discussed with the United States. But how is President Trump likely to receive any plan that also guarantees Ukraine's security?
Well, I think President Trump is for peace and for enduring peace. And I think in that particular context, he will do what is necessary. I think he has a certain understanding with the Russians, because the foreign minister of Russia and the secretary of state of the United States have had a very useful meeting in Riyadh, and they've had follow-up sessions at various levels in Istanbul. So I think there is some understanding of the Russian perspective, which was actually not quite there, because all the European peace plans were with the exclusion of Russia. You cannot have a solution or settlement in Ukraine without Russia. So I think that is a great step. And so I think Trump understands the situation very deeply. He's committed, I think, to bringing about a certain durable situation over there. And he wants the Europeans to have a greater sense of responsibility towards the whole affair, particularly in the burden sharing. And I think with that kind of a formula, something would definitely be found about the security assurances that Europe seeks to have.
Do you see a situation perhaps arising, and soon, where the European Union alone may have to ensure that Ukraine's resistance remains intact in its conflict with Russia? And how effectively will it be able to do that?
I think there was a study done just a couple of days ago, or maybe less than 2 days ago, by the War Studies College, which suggested that given the kind of capabilities Europe has at present, Europe would be unable to resist the Russians on this particular theater. They have neglected their own commitments to defense. I don't think the Americans are divorcing Europe. So I think that particular issue, while it has been mentioned in various quarters, is perhaps not something that I think is a great possibility. And I think what the Americans wish to do, and I think the Americans have already told the Europeans about this, and the Europeans are coming on board, is that till such time that the Europeans do not have the full capability, that they will step up their capability on the defense side, but till such time that they don't have the full capability, the Americans will be with them in terms of the alliance.
In sum, do you see an early end to this 3-year-old conflict between Ukraine and Russia?
I'm actually very optimistic because in opposition to the earlier stance that the Europeans had for having to continue the war, and there were all these comments which even suggested that they were making advances against the Russians, I think there is now a growing swell of support for actually looking at a ceasefire, and that leading on to a certain stable peace solution. And it's not just the few elements from Hungary and Slovakia and the far right in Germany, but I think, Meloni's talked about how it is very important to consider the new US position and bring everyone onto the table so that this can be done in a better way, in a more durable way. So I think the voices for peace within Europe are now gathering momentum. I understand President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer had a conversation, and they've agreed to prepare a draft peace plan, which Starmer will then discuss with Trump. So I think Europe is moving towards peace, and I think that is a very, very positive sign. Because for me personally, and as a diplomat who's lived for 4 decades in that world, to save the lives of citizens should acquire a higher priority over trying to label somebody an aggressor. So I think the Europeans are coming around to that particular realization as well.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, final word about European Union's security. Does it seem that sooner rather than later the EU will be standing alone in ensuring its own security?
This is a very interesting point that you've raised. I recall 2 decades ago, this was also a point of discussion, and the Americans were telling the Europeans we need to have much better defense capabilities. And at that point of time, they were talking of having independent brigades with heavy lift capabilities. But in these 2 decades, they haven't really done that. But in the last 2 weeks, what you find is that there are commitments from Germany, France, and UK that they will prop up their share of defense expenditure to GDP to over 2%. I understand that when the European Council will meet on Thursday in Brussels, they will discuss about bringing that threshold of 2% Europe-wide and giving exemptions from the limits that are usually there for European spending. If it is for defense requirements, they'll be given those exemptions. So in other words, I think the Europeans are getting more serious about defense preparedness, defense investment. They have the technology, they have the factories that can do it, but I think they haven't invested in it for themselves. And today, I think that realization is coming. It will take a little bit of time before they can do that, but I think we are on the right track. And in some ways, if I may add at this point, I think in some ways this aligns with the kind of idea that we have of a multipolar world that is emerging. And so Europe will become a more viable, potent, independent pole. And it will be able to work in partnership with everyone else. And I think that old 20th century notion of alliances will give way to more durable and win-win partnerships.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Ambassador Bhattacharya, for your valuable perspective and analysis on the story. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for being with us. Moving on now, India has progressed rapidly under Prime Minister Modi's leadership, and it leads in wildlife conservation efforts as well. From 3,682 tigers to 675 Asiatic lions, India's efforts are setting global benchmarks. Community participation and key projects like Project Snow Leopard are ensuring a thriving ecosystem. DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya reports.
India, with just 2.4% of the world's land, is the biodiversity powerhouse, contributing 8% of global biodiversity. Rooted in a culture of conservation, India under Prime Minister Modi's leadership has achieved a remarkable milestone in protecting its wildlife. Home to world's largest tiger population, India now boasts of 3,682 tigers with 57 tiger reserves safeguarding their future. The Asiatic elephant thrives here too, with around 30,000 elephants roaming its forests. India also sheltered the largest population of one-horned rhinoceros, numbering 3,000, and is the only country where the Asiatic lions, whose number have risen from 525 in 2015 to 675 in 2020. The Indian leopard's population has also seen a 75% surge, reaching 13,874 in 2022. Even the reintroduction of cheetahs has been hailed as a conservation triumph. Projects like Crocodile Conservation Initiative have rescued its population of gharials and other crocodiles. Meanwhile, Project Snow Leopard protects the elusive snow leopards with an estimation of 718 in the wild. Local communities are unsung heroes of India's conservation stories. Their effort in shielding endangered species, monitoring wildlife have been pivotal to their success. India's wildlife conservation journey is a testament to the power of culture, community, and commitment. Together, they ensure that these majestic creatures continue to thrive for generations to come. With camera Shiv Suman, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for DD India from Gir National Forest in Gujarat.
Celebrated annually on March 3rd, World Wildlife Day is an international celebration of the immense variety of life on our planet and a call for the protection of endangered species and natural environments. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Sasangir in Gujarat highlights India's dedication to Asiatic lion conservation with the launch of a state-of-the-art veterinary hospital, marking a key advancement in protecting our wildlife.
On March 3rd, the world will celebrate World Wildlife Day 2025, highlighting wildlife conservation finance, investing in people and planet. Marking this occasion, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit Sasangir, Gujarat, reaffirming India's commitment to Asiatic lion conservation with cutting-edge initiatives. One of the most significant aspects is the establishment of a state-of-the-art veterinary hospital in Sasan. This facility will serve as the National Wildlife Disease Diagnostic Center, playing a crucial role in monitoring and preventing diseases that have previously posed a serious threat to lions' population. As a part of the initiative, PM Modi will also chair a high-level meeting of the National Board for Wildlife. The members include representatives from various states, NGOs, and wildlife experts. This meeting will focus on strengthening policies for wildlife conservation. Following this, Prime Minister will personally engage with the forest staff at Sasan, recognizing their efforts and discussing ways to enhance on-ground conservation strategies. On World Wildlife Day, India is once again proving that conservation is not just about protecting species, it's about protecting the balance of nature for generations to come.
India is taking a significant step towards the long-term conservation of Asiatic lions. Gujarat's Gir is said to become a model for conservation efforts worldwide. On the World Wildlife Day, these projects reaffirms India's dedication to preserving its rich biodiversity for the future generation. With camera person Naveen, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for DD India from the Gir National Park in Gujarat.
In India's hilly state of Uttarakhand's Chamoli district, rescue teams completed the rescue operation by recovering the remains of 4 more labourers on Sunday. This follows an avalanche that struck a border roads organisation or the BRO camp in Mana village on Friday. The total death toll stands at 8. The army conducted the search operations using ground-penetrating radar along with sniper dogs, thermal imaging cameras and helicopters. As per the Indian Army, the avalanche hit the BRO camp between Mana and Badrinath, burying 54 workers inside 8 containers and a shed. The holy month of Ramadan commenced today in India and other parts of Asia after the sighting of the crescent moon on Saturday. Ramadan is a sacred month in Islam that falls in the 9th month of the Hijri or Islamic lunar calendar. Fasting in Ramadan, the 9th and the holiest month in the Islamic calendar, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and this is the time of the year when religious fervour is rekindled throughout the Muslim world. The holy month, during which hundreds of millions of faithfuls around the world observe a daytime fast, traditionally begins with the sighting of the crescent moon. In Saudi Arabia and most Sunni-ruled Middle Eastern states, Ramadan had begun on Saturday. Prime Minister Narendra Modi extended greetings on the occasion of the start of holy month of Ramadan. Prime Minister Modi on social media platform X said, "As the blessed month of Ramadan begins, may it bring peace and harmony in our society. This sacred month epitomizes reflection, gratitude and devotion, also reminding us of the values of compassion, kindness and service." Ramzan Mubarak, wrote the Prime Minister on X. The Kumbh Mela 2025, one of the world's largest religious gatherings in the world, concluded this week. Let's listen what eminent international journalist and editor of Nepal Samachar Patra, Saraswati Karmacharya, has to say about her Kumbh experience.
I recently visited Kumbh Mela and it was so fantastic, and when I was there and when I saw there, millions of people are there taking dip into the Ganga, it was so exciting and I just felt the divine experience there, it was so exciting. And the management of that Kumbh Mela Sthan, it was so well managed, well organized, and when we reached the 10th city, and other, all the management, when I saw, it was awesome.
Now let's take a look at more stories coming from India. Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar addressed students at IIT Hyderabad, emphasizing the importance of innovation and determination in driving the country's growth. During his visit, Vice President Dhankar expressed his vision for IITs to become platforms for innovation, fostering sustainable development and positioning India as a global hub. In a major breakthrough in the ongoing rescue operation at the collapsed tunnel in Telangana, the whereabouts of 4 out of the total 8 individuals trapped has been located. Meanwhile, the Chief Minister of Telangana, Revanta Reddy, conducted a comprehensive review of the rescue work currently being carried out at the SLBC tunnel. Heavy rains lashed several parts of the South Indian state of Kerala's Thiruvananthapuram on Sunday, disrupting normal life by causing waterlogging of roads and traffic jams, with the India Meteorological Department sounding an orange alert in several districts of Kerala. You're watching DD India Newshour. Time now for some sporting action. Well, India has defeated New Zealand by 44 runs in the Champions Trophy in Dubai on Sunday to set up the semi-finals clash with Australia on Tuesday. Indian spinners restricted the Kiwis to 205 runs as none of the batsmen could play freely against them. Only Kane Williamson showed some resistance with a gritty 81-run knock. Captain Mitchell Santner played some big shots in the latter part of the innings, but he perished while trying to accelerate the run rate. Spinner Varun Chakravarti was the pick of the bowlers with 5 wickets. Earlier, India put up 249 runs for the loss of 9 wickets. Shreyas Iyer led the fight back with a gritty half-century after early jolts. Matt Henry picked up 5 wickets for New Zealand. They will take on South Africa in another semi-finals on Wednesday. India's Ritvik Bolipalle and his Colombian partner Nicolas Barrientos upset the top seeds Andres Molteni and Maximo Gonzalez to win the men's doubles title at the Chile Open tennis tournament in Santiago. Bolipalle and Barrientos toppled Argentina's Andre Molteni and Maximo Gonzalez 6-3, 6-2 to clinch their maiden ATP Tour title as a team. Bolipalli and Barrientos fired 11 aces and dominated on serve, winning 87% of the first serve points. They did not allow their opponents a single breakpoint opportunity. Barrientos and Bolipalli first partnered in Dallas last month. This is the second ATP Tour title for the Indian tennis player who previously won the Almaty Open with Arjun Kadhe last year. India's Grandmaster R. Pragnananda outclassed Vincent Keimer of Germany to score his second victory and joined compatriot Arvind Chidambaram in the lead after the fourth round of the Prague Masters. Pragnananda avenged his defeat as Keimer had beaten him in the Tata Steel Masters tournament almost a month back. Arvind survived some initial hiccups before drawing with Sam Shankland of the United States, with Pragnananda and Arvind leading the pack, while Shankland, Keimer and Giri Lay are at the third spot, and it looks like the race for the title will be between the two Indians only, with 5 rounds still to come. And a 2-day camel race kicked off in Egypt on Sunday, where competitors from Jordan, Saudi Arabia and the UAE joined the Egyptian tribes in a thrilling display of tradition and skill. After a 5-year hiatus due to the pandemic, organizers are eager to revive this festival, celebrating the rich heritage of camel racing and drawing enthusiasts back to this ancient sport. So with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India Newshour. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and the world on our DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja. From all of us here in New Delhi, thank you for watching. Namaskar.